Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to take on the amazing beast that is the snow leopard. Um, we have done one before, but this one is a different pose. And so I'm going to start off with the basic shapes. Now, however you divide your page, that's entirely up to you, but I'm going to try to use the format that's similar to what we're seeing. There's a lot of green space over on 1/3 to the right. And if you prefer to cut that out, that's entirely up to you. I could understand a reason behind that, or you might want to trim it to make it a little bit smaller. But this being the class resource, I'm going to try my best to guide you by showing you that if I just put a pencil line there, that's roughly about 1/3. You don't have to do it as dark as I'm doing, but that tells me that all of the action is in this 2/3 here, or there and thereabouts. Okay. So what are we looking at? Well, its basic shape. Well, there's many ways to see basic shapes, to be fair. I'm going to do this one looking at the circular shape of his head. It's a funny thing that these sort of animals, you probably heard the saying that they can turn around in their own skin. And you can actually see that this one has got a perfectly round shape to that head. You see it? It's almost like a plate. Oh my goodness, it's just perfectly circular. Now, that's really useful if you can draw a perfect circle, but if you can't, that makes it difficult. Now, I don't mind if you were to use something to make it, to draw around that's round. That's fine. If you've got a little tea, a saucer or something, that's fine. But I'm going to show you a way that can help. So there's the center, somewhere there between the eyes and the nose. And so I'm going to leave a small margin. This is quite important, the margin, because you're going to be putting the ears onto that circular shape later. So the ears, of course, are not within that dish shape. So there we are. So I'm going to put a little line there as well to leave a margin. And I think that's quite important because otherwise I won't know where to begin my circle. And then if you look, this part here where the chin ends, well, that's a fraction as well. If I put a line through the middle there, you can kind of see that it's almost thirds again, isn't it? But I would say it's a little bit bigger than 1/3. It's just a little bit bigger. So if you find something that fits 3 times, 1, 2, 3 times, then that should work. But if it fits perfectly 3 times, make it a bit smaller. So there's 1, 2, and look, it's a little bit left there because I would like to put a little bit more of his chest in the painting. So there's my 2/3. And here's the trick. I am going to now draw a circle. Now, those of you who've been with me for a while will know that a circle fits in a square. So that could be really helpful for those of you who struggle with the circle. I certainly struggle with circles. So look, there's my square. Now, a square is not too tricky at all because a square is the same width as it is height. And if you're using a knitting needle, like I tend to, I could just gauge the width and the height. And if they feel about the same, I'm happy. And there's another trick you can do, which is you can put between the diagonals of your square, look, a little cross, like so. Do you know what that is? Of course you do. It's the spot between his eyes and nose, the center of the circle. And that means that I can use, and this is just something that can work for you depending on the comfort issue for your hands. But I find that if I hold the pencil like this and I put my middle finger on the spot, like so, pivot the pencil so that it's at 9 o'clock. You'll see if you're a righty like me. If you're a lefty, you'll have to do it at 3 o'clock. because that's more comfortable. And see, you'll arc like that. And this is a really easy way, he says. It's a much easier way to draw a circle. There we go. And then I'll move down to here. And there's nothing to stop you from moving your board if you like. You could move your board around like this to make it more comfortable for you, whichever direction that you struggle with. And before you know it, as I turn the circle around, you can see what's happening. There we are. Got a nice circle. I'll turn it back around the proper way so you can see. It's not too bad, is it? Now, the circle doesn't really exist, but it tells me where his head's going to go, and it's a pretty good guide. And certainly in the last painting we did, you didn't really get the feeling of that circular aspect of the head of the snow leopard, but you can't avoid it with this one. So there it is. So I'll give you a moment or so to get there, and then we're going to clear off the drawings apart from the circle, because you don't really need the square there anymore. So clear that. I'll redraw that circular shape because that's going to be helpful to those of us who have got the circle drawn, so that you know where the shoulders are going to go. Now, very often I will just do a straight line. Do you see that? And this is the same here. I'm just doing a straight line. Let me just put the purple line back for you. Remember the third that I told you about, this sort of line that separates the background green from the snow leopard. So that gives you a really good idea of where this is going to go from. So I'll use my knitting needle. And very basic, simple ways in to difficult subject matter. It is what the masters did all those years ago, because they were after accuracy with their what I'm going to call basic shapes. Because if you can get accuracy with your basic shapes, everything else, the detail that you draw upon it, will have a place to sit. If we don't get these accurate, these first shapes, then it's like a ship at sea without a compass. Anything can happen, and that's not what we want. It's not a comfortable journey. Okay, so now I'm going to do little triangles. You'll see that the ear can be, it's just like Hello Kitty, the kid's drawing. It's really that simple to begin with. And you can see why cartoons, or you can potentially see how cartoons evolve, because they are the simplest renderings of complex forms. So I'm just going to add those triangles. Isn't it a curious thing that whenever you look at a cat, or indeed dogs, wild cats especially, their ears seem to be so animated. They're more expressive than we give them credit for. Those ears are just listening, aren't they? They're like little radars. So there's the basic shape. If you're happy with that basic shape and you feel like, I've got that, then you're ready to move on to the next aspect. The next aspect is going to be proportions of the portrait. Now, I call it a portrait. I know it's a beast, but even with cats and dogs and animals, we call them pet portraits. It's going to start with the perspective. Now, already, if you've drawn those ears, you'll see that the head's slightly tilted a little bit. It's not like straight. It's tilted over to the left. No, sorry, to the right a little bit. So I'm going to make it as easy as possible. I'm going to use a red line right now. I'm going to put this through the center of the vertical line of the animal's portrait. Now, bear in mind that, of course, the animal's head is not flat like the plate. It has different planes. I will talk about those later, but for now, all we need to do is find that center point. Now, if I were to reappoint the center point there, that's the dead center there. Let me just put a yellow spot on the dead center. If you remember, it was between the eyes and the nose, somewhere there. So this line is going to be slightly, just ever so slightly to the right, because he's turning his, or she is turning a head to the right, our right. Okay, so I'm going to put that little line in there. This is 1 minute past the hour. Maybe I've done it a bit too much. That's better. That's more like 1 minute past the hour, I think. Something like that. When you're comfortable with that line, that's good. Now we're going to find a division. So in classical sort of proportions, we feature halves, thirds, quarters. They're the easy ones. Sometimes it doesn't fall into those. It gets a bit more difficult. But if we start with those easier ones, let's just look at the cross point. Now, traditionally, the tear duct is as good a place to line the eyes up with as any other. There are other places you could use, for example, the eyebrows, but we can't really see them, or the top of the flat of the eye, like there, these can line up. But if you look, the snow leopard has a tilt there, so it doesn't really line up so easily. It's not a straight line, but the tear ducts do line up. So that's why I'm going to use the tear ducts. I think that's going to be the easiest. But the proportion is not good for us. I'm sorry about that. The angle's fine. It's not quarter past, that would be straight. It's 16 minutes past. But do you see how close it is to that center spot? It's quite close, isn't it, for the tear ducts? So that will help you if you've still got your center dot. That will help you bring it down. I think that the measurement you're really looking at there is something like 3/7. Yeah, I know, it's a horrible one. If it's not 3/7, it might be 2/5, something like that. So I'd rather just do it with the center spot and get close. Okay, because in all when all is said and done, when you have got these tilts, I've just got to straighten my camera angle there a bit because it's going off. But when you've got your tilts in place and you start to what we call eyeball and draw detail, you will see any major errors. And this is quite close, this proportion. So go with it. You'll see it'll work. And hopefully you're finding this a comfortable pace. Now, the next interesting point, I think, is where the nose meets the mouth. And I tend to look at this like it's a wine glass. And bear with me, you'll see what I mean. I think somebody once said, it might have been Linda actually, it's a martini glass. Whatever you see, it does look a bit like a martini glass. There you go. So there's a little triangle there for the nose, but look at the base. There is the mouth. And it kind of is like that martini glass, isn't it? So what I'm looking for here is the proportions. So where would you start with this? Well, there's many places to go. I think that that point there between the nostrils line up nicely, don't they? They kind of are parallel. Do you see they're kind of parallel to that line there? It's not quite a third or a quarter. It's a bit annoying, I know. I'm sorry about that. But if you take the space from that line to the chin, and let's imagine that we've got this correct, I've got a feeling actually that it might be if you gauge that measurement from the chin to that line and turn it around and go the other way, if that's possible for you to do, that might be close. No, it's not really, is it? Oh, well, in which case you're going to have to gauge it. And I think that from here to here, the nose is, if I do it by eye, I'm pretty good at doing it by eye. I think that that again is something like 2/5. So look, that's from there to there. That's 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 5/5. I'm right. That is 2/5, and that's the green line that's on the other screen. Okay. Good luck with that one. That's probably the most challenging one to find. But if you do find that, well done, because then I think it's going to get a bit easier. Now, within animals, and of course within portraits in general, for humans as well, there are synchronicities. If I turn this back into something like the wine glass idea, do you see what I've got? I've got a cross. And there is a tilt involved. And you've just got to make sure of one thing, really, that this line here, that's the top of the nose, where the nostrils line up, the top of the nostrils, is pretty much parallel to the line for the tear ducts. Does that make sense? So that line's parallel to that line. And then you can start to draw this cross. Now, the cross point is a tilt. And if we use the clock again, it's 10 minutes or 11 minutes, something like that, past the hour. And I say something like that because I really mean that. Because once you put your line down, if it's 10 or 11 minutes past, you'll be able to feel by looking if it's correct. And if it is, then do the other way, which is about 10 minutes to the hour. You see? Good. Now it looks like a cartoon of a cat, doesn't it? There's his button nose. This will be his, well, this will be his mouth eventually. The next job for us to do is to work out where these eyes are going to go. We know they're on this line somewhere. We've got the angle, but we need a space between the eyes to work out where the eyes are going to start. Now, if you've got your cross martini glass like that, I'm going to call it, if you've got that, then this is not a problem for you, because take a straight line or something close to a straight line that's parallel to the center line. Do you see that? These all meet up. There is a synchronicity going on. The width of the eye, or the space between the eyes, is the same width as the width of the nostrils on the nose, which is also very similar to the width of the chin on the bottom jaw. So if I draw that line there, all I have to do is find the edges of the nose. Hopefully we got that in proportion. Draw a line that's parallel with the center line. It will probably touch the ear where it starts. If not, you can adjust that to make the ears do that. But if you see, look, I'm gridding this out, and there you go. There's a little bit of a parallax on my lens, which is just a bit of a distortion. I think that's close. So that's the space. That tells me that the eyes, left and right, are left and right of that line. There we go. Whew, got that done. Now you'll want to know the width of those eyes. And is there anything else that can guide us? Well, there probably is. There's probably a few things which could guide us, but I'm going to try and make it as easy as possible. If I were to continue this line here from the eye, from the nostril through the eye, it will probably meet the ear as well in the center, or something very close. Do you see that? It's interesting, isn't it? When you start to look for these proportions in your animal. And I do push them, I have to say. They don't always work out perfectly. But Isn't that close? That's very close. It's like a kite shape through the animal's head. So if I now put my line through my martini glass, aim towards the ear, if you have to curve a little bit, let it happen. Better to distort it a little bit to make it work than to miss the spot completely. But there we go. That's good because that now tells me that this eye is going to fit between here and here. All of this drawing was to get the width of these two eyes. Now, of course, we're going to have to remove all of that. It's like scaffolding, isn't it? But before I do that, let me just put a blue line at the top of his eyes. Now, you'll see that this also is apparently where the ear meets the side of the head. So everything on the cat, sorry, the leopard, is synchronized to everything else. It's almost like there is a funnel through the eyes, ears, and nose to the prey. I think it's not accidental. And right below it is the mouth. Ooh. So there we are. This whole thing is a hunting machine, and we've just kind of proven it. So now I'm just going to put a line from the bottom of the ear to the other bottom of the ear. There we go. And that tells me exactly where those eyes are going. It's quite scary. It's almost like Robot Cat now with all these angles. But there you are. Hope that's helped you to get to there. I'm going to remove all of the grid lines now and start to draw properly, which some of you probably have already. Um, but I hope that helps some of you, especially the beginners, to start to look for these apparent, well, synchronicities in the shapes. So now I'm going to draw that eye shape within this allocated area. I'm going to start with the left-hand eye. And as ever, I look for abstract ideas. Yes, I know. It's bizarre, but abstract ideas really work. And look, I see like a little bird. You see it? There's a little beak, little bird shape. Interesting. And I simplify it for now because there's more detail to it, but that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to draw that little bird shape into this shape in space here. I know that the tear duct is down in that little corner there. And let's see if we can get a leopard eye shape drawn. They're big eyes. That one is particularly large. So that's a starting point. And then within it, within the bird shape, there's a circle, but it's not a full circle, is it? It's 3/4. But that's a huge cornea. And then within the cornea, there's a small black. Well, cats are weird, aren't they, in a way, because they don't have a round iris. They have almost like what do you call them? Lizards. It's got a little slot. There it is. So there's one eye shape. The next eye shape, because there's a slight tilt of their head to the right, it is foreshortened a little bit, but there's still a bird shape. You can just about see that bird shape, little beak there maybe. If you can't see the bird shape, don't worry, just draw the eye. You know, there's no point in looking for it if you don't see it. Just if you just see the eye, that's what you've got to draw. But one thing I would like to point out, if I may, and that is there is a slight tilt on that. Yeah, slight tilt, which is part of the characteristic that I don't want to lose. Now, whether you're doing the neighbour's moggy or whether you're doing a snow leopard, you'll find these kind of synchronicities. You will, if you look for them, the whole thing will pretty much be alive with geometric lines like this. It will soften out though, as we'll see. Don't forget this 3/4 circle here. we only see the bottom part of the cornea. The top part is hidden under the eyebrow there. And then these two slots for irises, they must be looking at the same or similar point ahead. So try not to get the eyes looking crossed, because that could look very odd. It's strange, isn't it? I do remember a history teacher we had who was who poor fellow suffered from a crossed eye. Um, uh, I've never seen a cross-eyed cat. Have you? Has anybody ever seen a cross-eyed cat or a dog for that matter? Let me know if you have in the comments. That would be funny to know. But of course, I shouldn't laugh at this sort of thing, but it's just an observation. So there we are. I've got the cat starting to come alive. I hope yours is too. Now, once you've got that, we can clear off. All of that was to get that amazing stare, because that's the hardest part of the whole picture, as I said. You can get rid of everything else now. But keep the margarita glass. That'll come in handy later. The martini glass, I mean. Wishful thinking, margaritas around here. Okay, so there it is. Back to martini glass, but now we've got two eyes. It's happening, isn't it? Now, we're going to look at the nose now for a while, and you'll probably notice there's more to the nose. There's a curve. You see that? There's a curve, almost like devil's horns or a bull's horns there. Yeah. And they are curving out at the edge. This is where the nostril goes back to. It's almost as if he's not content with just sniffing what's in front of him. He has to sniff to the sides as well, because those nostrils sort of open up to the sides a little bit. I mean, really, we wouldn't stand a chance, would we, if we were in a forest with this thing? You'll see, hear, and smell us coming before we've even realized he's there. There we go. So that's the side of the nose, and that's curved. If you can get that, that's brilliant. And then I would like to show you this shape. This is quite important for the pink of the nose. Do you see? This reminds me of a ram's horn there, or almost like a ram's skull. You know, there's this rounded part here that goes up, and then it goes down into a V. There's like a V shape between the ram's horns, if you see what I mean. There we go. Oh, got a bit of a noise going there, so I'll just make sure we're muted. So look for that ram's horn. If you don't see it, don't worry. Just draw what you see. But it certainly is wavy. And then follow it down like the letter Y as it comes down the middle of the nose. That's going to be pink, by the way, or a pinkish rouge note. And the rest is kind of dark. So if I clear that off now, hopefully you'll see what I mean. Yeah, you see, it sort of pushes, it bulges out a little bit there, either side of the nostrils. So make a little bit of space for the light pink value to go in there. There is a line down the center of it as well, like a little thin black line. You can sort of draw that in as well. Once you've got that, then we're moving down to the mouth. Now, this one looks quite a happy character. It's got a bit of a smile there. And there. That's quite important, I think. But just to help you get that working correctly, there's another shape that might be useful. Look at his chin, and I'm going to draw the chin like that for now, like two plums, because that will help you to get the width of the smile, because otherwise we might go a little bit wide. So I'll just try and draw that. Now the chin might just pop out of the original plate shape. So let it do that. Not a lot, but a little bit. And notice that the chin is slightly lower, the jaw, I should say, really, the bottom of the jaw is lower on the left and slightly higher on the right. So there we go. So two plums. And that will help me now, I hope, to draw the circular shape of his smile because it's quite broad. It's got a very broad mouth. All the better for eating whatever it is these things chase about the forest. So there we are. They're very rare, aren't they now? I think that somebody might be able to tell us, but is it China in a it's an Asian animal, isn't it? I'm not quite sure where you find these things. So now I'm going to start to spread out. Let's see if I can get a bit more shape to, before I draw the ears, I'd like to sort of bring that curve around to the neck and then to his shoulder. It's sort of, I do these little ghosty lines. I would recommend them. You just sort of let it happen. Yeah, that's feeling better. It's not perfect yet or anything, but it's helping. And maybe I made the chin a little bit too low. We'll see. We will see. Now, there's something else going on as well, and I'm going to call this the jowls. I have no idea what the anatomy of a snow leopard is really, but they're kind of like jowls. It sort of pushes out. You see there? Kind of pushes in again there, but ignore that for now. It's just a small observation. It may not be quite right. So I've just put that little bit in, and that's on the circular shape there. And then over here, that definitely pushes out. Maybe it's a bit wider than the circle. So I use a bit of line weight. And I'm trying to see if that's giving me what I'm after. And it's not quite, so I'll adjust here and there to push the volumes. And now I think I must put those ears on because they are not triangles. They are anything but a triangle, really. I don't know what that tick is. I'll get rid of that if I can. It's a stamp, it's called. I'll get rid of it. Don't want the stamp. I want pen. Let's remove that. There we go. Let's have a look at this shape here. Then I'll look at the chat because somebody might have told us a few things which I don't know. Reminds me of butterfly wings more than a cat's ear. If you see what I mean. There's a small kind of side ear there. Again, probably evolved to hear things at the side. And then the tall ear goes outwards. And then it's kind of square in a curvy way at the corners, but it is squarish. And then it turns back into the top of the head. Getting there. I'm not saying I'm convinced by that yet. Let's just remind ourselves which ear is the highest ear towards the sky. And it's that one, isn't it? If I follow along with the line, hopefully I can prove it for you. There you go, you see? So make sure that this ear is apparently a little bit taller because he's tilting his head and it's going to have a bearing on the whole drawing. And we will find more than likely as we draw this, we're going to have to change things as we go. It's a difficult subject matter, as I said, but it's not impossible. And I know you can do it because you've every time we draw things, you're coping with it very well. But with difficult subject matter, you kind of build it in stages like this. Start with the big shape and then gradually hone in on things. And then you have to look left and right, or right and left, depending if you're left-handed, at the subject matter and your drawing. It's the only way. And you're going to check the chat now, though, because a couple of things have come in. Okay, Linda says they live in arid mountains and eat the mountain goats. Poor goats. They also live in Marwell Zoo. There you go. Well, if you want to take photos, if they let you take the camera in, Marwell Zoo it is. Now, there's a big market for snow leopards. I should say, I do know a professional snow leopard portrait artist who probably goes to Marwell Zoo more than likely because you've got to go somewhere for them, I guess. Can't all be going off to the arid mountains. But the competition is fierce. You really have to be exact. Let's put it that way. So I'm just going to push the head out a little bit there. Do you see as it pushes out? There's a bit more girth coming out here. And just as I did before, I want to show you, if I may, that this line here is very close to the edge of his jowl. Do you see what I mean? It's very close. So where that ear goes, that's where that jowl goes. And that's pretty much in line with the nose there. It's like a big teddy bear. And you wouldn't want him to cuddle you much, perhaps. So that's pushed that out a little bit. Oh, it's starting to feel more like what we're seeing, I think. The next thing that I think is important is the shape of the top of his head, because right now he kind of looks like a teddy bear. But if you look, these animals have more angle to the top of their head. You see? Yes, that's really, I think, incredibly important. It's not very much out of the top of the pie shape that we started with, or the dish shape, but it is more angular. So we've got to be careful there, I feel. Wow, that had a transformative effect, just putting that bump in there. Okay, so that's coming on well. And now the next stage, I hope, is going to reveal something even more interesting. Look at this shape here, the side of his nose. Let's go back into, remember this idea of the two plums? There we go. And they touch in. Do you see where it touches in? The tear ducts again. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to try and draw that sort of plum shape. There we go. And notice that this, just like the chin, we had two plums before for the chin. This one may be just a little bit smaller than this one. Just a little bit. And it's very close to the side of the nostril. Is that working? Kind of is, isn't it? It's coming together. And now I think mine looks a little bit like a bear. Still looks like a bit like a bear, and I think I know why. If yours is looking like a bear, try this trick because I think there's something I'm missing, and I think it's to do with a synchronicity at the side of that jowl there. Because we've got this jowl here, that point there, where it sort of comes out to. We've got one here, but you don't see it as well. And that lines up with the chin, look, through there. I'm going to get that tilt. And if I get that tilt, it should give me the width because I don't think that's correct, that line. It's not very friendly looking. So I'm just going to put this in line with the chin. I'm going to get the angle. The angle is 20 minutes past the hour or 19, something like that. Yep, there we go. And I think it's more like that. So that was wrong. And that's the thing with drawing. You put some in, you take some out, and you have to keep trying new ideas. Otherwise, your drawing may not improve quite the way you wanted it to. Hopefully it will. Okay, so yeah, making sure I've got the right pencil. Now, the next thing that's going to give us more realism, of course, is when we start to put the spots on the animal's head. But before we do that, let's have a look, shall we, to see if we've got the eye sockets. Now, the eye sockets, if I do them in pink, they bulge out like that. You see, they're really very prominent. So I'm going to see if that will help as well. I think that's something I can definitely improve. And the eye socket itself seems to be in line with the top of the nostrils. Again, everything sort of, then it curves around to the side of the eye. So that could be very useful. And then if I move over to this side, yep, it's kind of following on that idea there from the side of the nostril, a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. You can kind of see it if you really look for it. And then it orbits around the eye and then it comes back in again, almost pointing towards the little bird beak that was on the side of the corner of the eye. Sort of turns a little bit. Now, this line is not really there, but it kind of demonstrates where the eye socket lifts out a bit. And then once you've got that, I think we're very close because what's really missing now, apart from a few lines on the shoulder of the animal here, which I'll put in now, but what's really missing is the spots. And once we've got some spots and whiskers, we can go into paint. And this thing should come to life then. So I've just put a few little curves. There's his shoulder. There we go. Tips back into there. I'll clear off my drawings. Here we go. And now we're going to look for some very important spots, very important ones. Now, there seems to be within the snow leopard at least two, if not three types of spot. Okay. And as we know, a leopard never changes his spots, but they are kind of symmetrical. There's a symmetry there. So that's important. So we have noticed that the little spots on his head seem to have a symmetry line there. As we've been drawing it, we can see there's a sort of a, look at that, like a little, almost like a little tattoo of spots. And I'm going to start off with a little curvy line like that. And then I'm going to pepper these little lines with the spots. And I'm hoping that if I treat it like a tattoo design, if you see what I mean, starting at the curve from that little lump at the top of his head, curving down between his eyes. So just draw a little curvy line. Maybe that'll help. And then left and right, we have a kind of a mirror image. It's not really a mirror image because, well, I guess they're not perfectly exact, but also he's turning his head a little bit, isn't he? So you've got to do your best there, I'm afraid. But that looks like a little bird flying in the air, look, a little simple bird. This bit above his eye follows that line down and then goes outwards. Now, I know they're not spots yet, but of course, they will become it once we've got the guideline. We need a guideline. So this is a reverse idea of that one, a bird flying off. And then we've got this little upside down V shape that leads back to the eye. Do you see? Working, isn't it? That's good. It's marvelous how a few little details like that start to make, oh yeah, it's starting to feel like it could be a snow leopard. Right, once you've got that, then we will see these. You see those little frown marks on the side of his, look, just there. I'm going to add those next. They're kind of above that point there on the eye, where the corner of the eye there is. There's a sort of a line pointing upwards. Same on the other side, but a mirror image. Good. That's working. Next. Well, then there's a spot here. Do you see it? With almost like a little domino of spots. Now, they're not exact, are they? Look, this doesn't have three, it has a different mark. So I'll let you decide how you do that little domino of marks. I'm just going to put two spots here and a spot above, two spots here and a spot above. That kind of works. They're the small spots. And then if you go further back, do you see here there's spots and spots and spots? We can paint those on. If you can draw them, you can paint them. So we'll just paint those. But there are some others which are not so obvious. Like look at this ring, like a necklace of spots, and they are in alignment. So I'm going to draw this sort of necklace as a guide. Underneath the chin, of course. And then I will space those bigger spots onto those. Now the spots are like the jewellery on the snow leopard. They're very important. And if you were really to want to get your snow leopard to look like a snow leopard, look at these ones are in a line here. There's three spots in a line. There's probably three spots in a line here as well somewhere. But anyway, I'm probably going a bit fast for some. So all I should say is if you get your snow leopard spots in the right place, they will look so much better. And look for lines, curves, rings of spots where they kind of are like mirror images of each other. It does help, but also getting the intensity or the scale of the spot, like that's a very big spot there, which has another big spot over here. And then there's another big spot there. And of course, there will be another big spot as a mirror image of that one stepping up to there. And then so forth and so on. And I think you catch my drift. But there's so many of them that I can't really, in the time we have, point them all out. So I'm just doing the big ones. These ones over here, I will have a little bit of a little bit more liberty, you'll see. Now, the third type of spot I was talking about are these ones that seem to be on all cats that line up the whiskers. So let's draw a few whiskers, shall we? Let's look, remember the two plums? From the plums, you have a line of whiskers. And look, that line there and that line there, they're not random. They're definitely full of spots. So if I put that line there and that, it's like a mustache, Salvador Dali's mustache. And I just space onto it some little spots. I'm not going to copy it exactly. I'll put 4 or 5 on each one. But from those spots, I'm going to put whiskers coming outwards, if you see what I mean. And there's also some spots radiating above and below. Do you see them? They're obviously very important because that's where the whiskers come out from. And if you don't put these spots, the whiskers don't look right for some reason. So you've got to kind of have these spots so that your whiskers, when you paint them on, feel like they're naturalistic. So I hope these bits of advice are going to help you. Snow leopards are a serious subject, as I've alluded to, um, but they're not impossible. And as I draw these lines now, I think you're going to get the idea that actually, if you were given more time, and if indeed you have more time to devote to painting these beautiful animals, they will reward you uh, with a lot of success, and they're not impossible. So there's my whiskery spots. I'll throw in a few whiskers for those who enjoy doing the detail. Um, I'm going to erase all my guidelines because we're very close now to going into paint. Once I've erased my guidelines, I'll have one more look at it. Maybe we could draw some darks for the ears here and there. There's a little shadowy shape as the ear goes in to there. And you can put a little bit of tone there if you need a reminder. Uh, and then what we will do, once I've got the whiskers drawn in, we'll pause and we'll go back to the studio to see how you're doing. Okay. But I think that's okay. I think it's feeling more like the cat shape, isn't it? There's a few more spots down here that I think might be useful. I'll just see if I can just put them in. Now, the whiskers. For the whiskers, you need a sharp pencil and you need a mark that goes like this. So you put your pencil on the spot, one of those spots in the lines, and you pull it very quick, like that. Did you see? I'll do it again. And this is for one whisker. I'm going to do two lines. I've captured a whisker between the lines. Now, some artists will go to a lot of lengths and they will more than likely wish to use masking fluid for the whiskers to have the best effect. You know by now that that's not me. I don't really do that because it takes so much time in the studio class, like the in the Zoom class. But if you have a studio and you put the time into masking out your whiskers, they look brilliant. They will look so much better if you take the time to do it. So I'll leave that up to you. But there we are. I think I have got my snow leopard how I wanted it. Next, I will go into paint. Before we go into paint, of course, I need to see how you're doing. So I'm going to pause the video there. Hope that's helped you and see how you are doing in the studio. In the second part of the class, we're going to lay in our lights first of all. And for that, you're going to need, well, you're going to need a mixing brush and a larger brush. Now, because we're doing fur on an animal, I like to try different brushes. And so today I'm going to use a round mop. This is a squirrel and it will give a kind of feeling of fur. I'm going to start off using raw sienna, as I promised. Now, with raw sienna, if you've noticed before when we've used raw sienna, it is transparent. But if you don't have this color, yellow ochre will definitely work. I'm going to make quite a large tea wash. So that's the starting point. And that color, I will use this well here to mix all the subsequent colors into it. I would like to put a little bit of pink in there because I feel that the fur has a slightly peachy note to it. Sandy, peachy, beige color. Right, so now I pick up, make sure your squirrel brush is clean. And now we're going to start to dress the lights, which is basically the bib of his shoulders and chest around the plum shape of his nose. Remember this bit here? So you see, I'm just using broad brush strokes. And around his jowls, there's a bit of that sort of tea wash of golden colour. There it goes. On his ears, the top of his ears, I know that some have struggled with the ears today, and I probably should have focused a bit more on the ears, thinking about it. Um, they're more like teddy bear ears, but I think if you just put a bit of gold on the sort of edges of those ears, it'll work better for you. Now, that's not to say that there isn't some gold over here. There probably is. So I'll put a little amount there as well. But I feel that this is more silvery. And I did mention there'll be a sort of a crimsony violet note in the shadows, which I hope will help to give a silvery feel. Okay, so there we go. Now, while you're waiting for the next mix, it's not a bad idea in the lights just to spray your paper. There we go. Didn't pump the atomizer enough. You want to find mist, not a splatter. Next, well, into your raw sienna, there's your raw sienna tea wash. Add a little bit of burnt sienna. So you'll get this warmer note. Now, with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some little flecks here and there where I feel that there's more of a warm note. And that can be just on top of the golden notes that you've already created. And it's mainly, I feel, around the neck and perhaps along the spot lines. Remember these lines where we had some, yeah, and it's not a lot. It's not a lot. And the next place I would like to put that is on the brow. So along the brow here, it feels like just before we turn to the shadow, there's a bit more warmth in the fur. And around the side of his ears, just at the edge of the fur on these sort of areas of the jowl and the side of the head. But you notice it's not a lot. It's just a little bit. There's not a lot of color. So we've got to be careful. Now, the plum of the mouth, as I was calling it, that's also got a little bit of this red note here and there. And I'm kind of guessing where it is, feeling mainly rather than interpreting it literally. So please feel free to explore those red notes how you wish, but I feel it's just at the corners. It's almost as if it might be everywhere, but it just catches the lights on the corners of his or her anatomy. So I put a little bit here and there, and this time I'm using a size 12 brush. So that's good. Next, we dip into an area where we have grey. Now, when we're using grey, we have to be careful. We have to be careful with all the colors, but I'm using Payne's Grey, which is transparent. If you're using black, make sure you, for goodness sakes, keep it very pale indeed, like a weak tea. You see how thin that is? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to build up, starting with the shadowy areas. Now, the shadowy areas, well, let's start with the easier areas first. Along the shoulder here. Down his back and sides. And just let it merge, but don't paint over all of your golden glow. Because what we want to do is to create a feeling of that spot fur, that spotty fur, but we have to start with the underlying forms first. So with this grey, as I said, it's a very weak tea wash, probably better weaker than, more weak than you need, and you can build up around the shadowy areas. So let's advance further up and let's see where more shadowy areas can be found, like around the eye socket there. Remember that curve for the eye socket? The eye socket curves and wraps around the top and the side of the head, like so, and a little bit down towards the cheek. I'm letting that happen. While I'm doing that side, because it's the same tone, I'll do the other side and I'll build the cheekbone, starting with the shadowy form of the cheekbone, working my way down and trying to get a feeling of the form. That's very important throughout this, all of the stages. Remember, this is a tea wash, and as I build this grey up to the top of his head, we might forget briefly that this is a light, but because it is a tea wash, it's providing light to the painting. Interesting. Now what I will do is I will soften some edges before I go further. Now what I like to do is when I'm softening edges, I like to play with this idea of the fur. Do you see I break the form a little bit by putting some furry lines? This is a nice idea when you're doing an impression of fur. Notice it's much lighter below the eye here. That's where all the light's going. This whole creature is all about seeing and smelling and hearing. Everything, as we've seen, is the geometry of hunting. So make sure you leave those light spaces under the eyes because that's where it's going. And then similarly, now we will build the shadows on the brow here. This is what we would call on the human a glabella. I have no idea what we would call it on a cat, but it's this bit here that will make your snow leopard look like he's frowning. So I'm going to connect that shape there. And then I'm going to allow some little lines of that tone to come down the side of his nose to there. But I'm leaving a lot of light in the center of his nose because it seems to be that the nose is coming out, the plane is catching the light. So don't paint too much depth there. Okay, now this is the silvery color that gives the snow leopard that particular feel. Now I'm going to put this now under his chin, but notice I paint around the chin. Do not paint into the chin, it's white fur there. But you can paint some little lines to sort of give a suggestion of hairy fur. Yeah, that's a good idea. And do you notice how quick I'm doing some of these brush strokes? This will give you a feeling of the weave of his fur because when you do fast marks like what I'm doing there, do you see it makes it feel like fur? It's one of those little tricks. And you can go back in, look there, and lift by cleaning your brush. Just lift a few little lines, and that gives more depth to his fur. And that's pretty much the lights, give or take. We need a little bit in the ear. You see how I paint around some of those little hairy bits in the ear with the grey? And it's just a tea wash of grey. That's all it is. We're nearly there now. We have got our lights. The only thing I need to do now, some artists, as I said, will more than likely use masking fluid on their whiskers. You could use a palette knife and scratch back like this. We'll do that later. And that's how I'm going to try to achieve that effect. You can also use, if you're careful, a blade that can cut the paper a little bit. I'll show you that once we've got through the stages. But the next area is the eye. Hopefully you didn't paint into the eye. If you have, don't worry too much, at least. Now, for whatever reason, I've got two pictures of my snow leopard. I'll just click on it, see if I can. There we go. That's really the one I want to share with you. Let me just share that. I think I've shared the wrong image. It's the pop-up one we want. That's better. I'll make this a bit smaller because it's huge. There we go. That's the one I want to show you. Oh, and while I'm doing that, I may as well say thank you to Oliver van den Eyde, his name is. I hope I said that correctly. Probably haven't. I never normally get these sort of names right. But this is from Unsplash, one of the free copyright pictures that we can use as artists. Make use of it. It's a brilliant app. Now, looking at those eyes, there is a golden note, very similar to what we started with. So clean your brush, dry your brush, pick up some gold, and paint in the eye. Paint the whole shape. Why not? Good. Then we can paint that greenish note just by putting some grey. Let's go a little bit darker with the grey into the... Now, you could use a bit of blue if you want to get that green note. There we go. A little bit of grey into the centre of the eye. Now, when you put the grey in, or blue if you prefer, you could use a bit of cerulean. That will work. Make sure it's a little bit thicker than the previous golden colour. And when you do that, of course, what will happen is the grey will push the yellow away a little bit. Okay, good. So that's the first stage for the eyes. That's the lights. Well done. If you got there so far, you're doing great. The next area is the nose. The button nose is a pink. For that, I'm going to use Cad Red. T-wash. And just paint that button nose there. Do you see? Don't worry about painting into the darks. It's not going to hurt if you did. So there's all the lights. Well done if you got there, because really and truthfully, that's as difficult as it needs to be. Now, the background at this stage can be attempted, or you can leave it till later. I'm going to use sap green because it's a foresty scene, and I'm going to make it coffee thickness because I don't want to do a lot of background. So I'm just going to get it sort of going, as it were. So you see that's the thickness. It's a bit thicker than what I've used there. It is a middle value. So I'm using my big mop and I'm just going to spread it all over. Now, when I get close to the fur, do you see what I did? Where there's fluffy bits of fur, I anticipate that by making some little ingresses into my shape with the brush to get that furry feel. And then I bring it together with some big, bold brush strokes. And that is really as easy as it can get. You don't need to make it any more difficult than that. And if you do make it more difficult than that, well, of course, that's your prerogative as an artist. You might want to be trying to push your backgrounds. Now, as I put this in, what I tend to do is, as I'm putting the first wash of my background in, while it's still wet, that is, I might lay in some other tones like grey. So there might be some greys that you're seeing, or even burnt sienna. Burnt sienna will look like soil in the background, and pink will look like soil. So have fun as you put in your background colors. A little bit of pink, you see, can look just like soil in an abstract way between the grasses. While it's still wet, you can get a long way just using your big mop by picking up some Payne's Grey and look, just throwing it into the mix of green. And while it's still wet, of course, what happens is you take advantage of that wet into wet um, aspect of watercolor that gives you beautiful soft transitions and makes the out of focus background do exactly what it sounds like. Go out of focus and distant. And that may well be just the background this scene needs. We'll only know in the next stage as we build our snow leopards portrait further into the painting. So there you go, there's the lights. In the middle ground section, we go slightly stronger and we're going to make the same kind of mixes. So clean your brush. If you're still painting your background, don't worry. It's the same colors yet again, but a bit stronger. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some raw sienna, probably a little bit of raw umber. You see it's going to a golden brown. Now the raw umber is going to milky thickness with the raw sienna. And I like to just then start to put some flecks here and there to try to imitate this idea where I can of the fur. And I'm going to build this up and I'll probably give it yet again another spray with the atomizer just once, just to let the colors do their thing. Because watercolor really wants to be let loose and free and expressive. It wants to be all of these wonderful, expressive qualities. But each stage that we paint this animal with is going to gradually frame the light. And because the animal is sitting in the light, as it were, you don't need a lot of these middle value colors. The lights are the biggest stage, and then gradually in succession, we will add more, or sorry, less mids and then even less darks. Okay, so you can see I put a little bit more fur and I'm just softening some of these. If I see a hard edge that just pulls my eye to it, I just dot and dash it with the brush. And I find that that's a much better way to what I call bed in the color. Because when you're painting directly onto forms like this, a hard line can pull the eye straight to it. There we go. There's the brown areas. There's not a lot. There's really not a lot. There's a lot of silvery colors in this animal. And that's mostly what's coming next. So Payne's Grey again. So this is Payne's Grey down here. We had tea wash. Now we're going to a slightly stronger Payne's Grey. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to build this up. Now, I'm going to be painting some fur effects on the top of his head into areas of the shadow in his ears. Maybe even start to sculpt a little bit more tone around those cheekbones. That's certainly something I feel it needs. And then in this stage also, I will be focusing on spots, you will see. But first of all, I always like to get the form to build a little bit with these tones. So let's look at the mouth, shall we? Because there's quite a bit here that has a lot of form. So as I paint this triangle into the mouth, I'm going to get that smile that I thought I could see. I'm also going to paint the nostrils. Be careful you don't paint over your pink of your nose. But this is not as dark as it might appear. It is only but milky thickness. I will put a little bit on the whiskers on his chin, but not a lot. But there will be some areas in the fur. You have to be very careful not to overdo it. I haven't produced a value map for you, so we have to go carefully, but you can see as I bring these areas of fur, I'm feeling the idea of the fur and how it moves over the surface of the form of the animal. And some of the fur is going to go that way, and some of it's going to go that way, and some of it, imagine it's a drape, you know, over the animal, and or if we were wrapping it in a blanket, that's the direction we want that fur to go. I'm doing big brush strokes at the moment, but I will loosen these up, you'll see. A little bit more at the side of his nose, into the corner of his eyes. Here, this is a crucial area. A little bit here at the frown of the brow. A little bit more on the cheekbone. And then really, I must, very close now, but I must start to soften some of this. So to do that, I clean my brush, I dry my brush, and look, I will tickle away. And you follow your instinct with this, really. We're trying to get the feeling of the form. I'm going to build the spots next. So don't worry about spots just yet. But you see, as I tickle around the mouth, I might pull a little bit of gray into the white areas and vice versa. You know, it's just, yeah. And then soften these areas with the, as I keep trying to repeat, which is a very important, I think, is any hard lines, like these ones on the fur here, just soften them a little bit. That will be the strategy, the prevailing strategy for building this form. Now, wherever the fur looks too hard, like here, I will just soften it. I might change brush to a slightly more springy brush, just to soften as I go. And I'm happy with that because, again, this is the middle value pass. There's going to be darks, and it might seem quite severe at this moment. You'll be thinking, oh my gosh, we've ruined it. We haven't. It's always the middle value where the painting starts to give you little bits of a urgent feel of it could be slipping out of your grasp, but trust the process. So now I'm going to put some spots in. So I'll go a little bit darker with the grey. Here we go. And I'm looking for spots. Now we did have this pattern, if you remember, that's a very good place to start. Now the thickness I am employing here is slightly thicker milk. It's not quite creamy, as I don't really want to push, but it's slightly darker than the previous grey. And I'm painting those shapes. And now I've got that sort of tattoo idea going. I'm going to put some spots. There we go, some spots. Hoping that these will weave their way into the fur and look more like spots. Starting to. You can use a smaller brush if you prefer. I'm happy with this one. This one's going to be fine. But you see what's happening? He's starting to appear again. And this is the problem with the second stage or the middle values. We lose faith in the process because it flattens. It will flatten. But as we gradually reappoint the next tone, we frame the light. So as I put these spots on now, you really got to study your resource and dot them on as carefully as possible. You'll start to see that your snow leopard starts to peer out again. It's nice when you put the spots onto a damp area in the painting. That's really where it has most effect because the spots are blurry in the fur. They're not quite sharp spots. A few more here. There's always a few that lead the eye to the whiskers. It's a group or a little almost like little satellites of spots around the side of the head. That's good. That's looking more like it. And then now I know some of you will be thinking, oh, I want to paint those eyes. Wait for the eyes. They're going to come. And when they do come, they'll look great. It's like Christmas, waiting to open the presents. I'm going to go a little bit darker now underneath the smile of that mouth. It gets very dark in the sort of quickening of the lips, and those spots again, they come out towards us. Yes, it's happening. Now the bigger spots, these ones will have fun. These, as I paint these, watch what I'll do. I'll do the sort of circular shape quite crudely, and then look, I'll brush upwards into the alignment of the fur. Did you see? That's a good idea. Let me just zoom out a bit so we can see the pattern of the spots. Oh yes, there's another one here. So let's try that again. Just so you do a big shape like that, and then you just brush into the fur, just to break the spot as a circular pattern, because it's not really a circular pattern. Seemingly, it's more considered than that. Along here, there's a bit more. These are the very important symmetrical spots that, yes, give you that feeling. Now, over here, there are some very important spots, and I'm going to use a little bit of purple. You remember I said I would put a bit of violet? That violet, it just needs a bit of pink in the grey. I'm going to paint a few patterns because some of the spots seem to be almost have a little stripe idea going on. Some of them have like I dare say, a pattern like there's one like a little star there. And then you might see other patterns. So trust your eye. Try to follow those ideas of the spots. Hopefully what's going to happen is your snow leopard will come and go a little bit because this is camouflage, remember? And that's part of the reason why it's difficult to paint, because with camouflage, it does come and go. It's kind of in nature, it will disappear into the shadows a little bit. That was the whole idea of it, so that the prey, that poor goat, sadly, won't see what's coming until it's perhaps too late. And that's bad news for the goat, but it's good news for this creature. And let's face it, the world would not be the same without this creature, would it? So you can see now I'm building him up a bit more, building that shadow, softening the edge. That's good. That's really getting there. Now I have to go into the eye area, and I'm going to do that with a smaller brush now. This time, just to pull over the palette a little bit so you can see it a bit more, I'm going to go a little bit stronger now. This is creamy thickness, and I'm going to start to paint those eye shapes using the smaller brush Now this should start to crystallize um, the glare a little bit more. Remember just to treat it as an abstract in many ways, just painting that black shape of the eye. As we paint this, you'll start to get your confidence back. This was an important stage because if you've been what I would call patient, you're going to get some reward now because very often when you're painting and you're holding back like this, it's easy to lose confidence because without the eye, it's half the beast it should be. So enjoy painting these eye shapes, and it's just a black shape. There it is, glaring at us. And then, of course, those amazing pupils there. Now, as I paint with the same color around the nostrils. Now, this time we've got to really think about where the shadows are in that nostril. It goes right deep into those sides of the nostril. And it also goes pretty deep into that area there. It's like, it's like a little flap, isn't it? Where the scent of the prey will go through and stimulate some kind of response in the brain of this beast. And then as you pull downwards towards the mouth, look, just here, that little trough where the smell meets the saliva, I guess. Get a bit graphic. But the whole olfactory sense on this creature is all welded together. And you can see it really in the engineering of its portrait. And look, as I put the smile in, not really a smile much at all, I can now put those final spots. Now, some of the spots are darker than others, as we can see. Like, for example, there's some very dark spots at the side of the eye. There's one there. And on the top of his head there, on these little cresty things. And there's a pattern of spots. I can see them sort of going back into a line. I'm going to put some of those in. You might even see some burnt or raw umber in those shapes. That it's all in there. I'm just going to stick with grey, and I'm going to put a darker area into the ear. Maybe that was a little bit dark, we'll see. And then I'll put a few more darker spots, if I can, down here on his chest. Looks a bit darker there and there. And then I'm going to review it. And that's very close now. What I think I need now, and this is the interesting thing, if I pull this across, he's staring out, it looks pretty good, but the background is not dark enough this time. Strangely, isn't it? So here's the thing. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to push a few colors. I'm going to use raw umber, then I'll check the chat, see how you're doing. This is raw umber into my raw sienna. And there's a couple of areas where I'm going to push the darks in the brown area, just by the neck, just at the side of the head there, a little bit by the brow here and there. I just feel that needs pushing here and there. These are the dark accents, but they're sort of the golden dark accents because in this animal we have silvery notes and we have golden notes. It's a more of a balance really of greys than anything else. But as I put them in, I will soften and tickle those browns a little bit because I don't want them to steal more steal more of the focus than they need to. That feels good. That feels better. And what I will do is the last stage of the darks. I will put a little bit more violet, a little bit more violet. Just going to put a smattering of violet. Just feel it needs more violet in the pelt. Now, you may not see the violet straight away, but once you put a little brushwork of it in, build up the effect of that as a grey, because violet in this instance will blend nicely with the grey. Hopefully, if I build up that background colour a little bit more now, which I'm going to do shortly, my snow leopard will actually start to come out of the picture plane. And that's the full aim of all of those stages. So background's not dark enough, is it? So let's really push the background. Now I'm going to use this time. Now, this is where I was saying, don't do it unless you have to. I'm going to use some Viridian into the black. Going to go quite strong because the Viridian is my darkest green and the Payne's grey. I'm going to leave a little bit of the light of the background because it is a jungle kind of background. See if I can push that dark. Be careful not to paint over those ears. See if I can get the head. Oh yes, that's starting to already have some effect. I think that was the way. Around the side of his head here. Going to go a little bit easier as I get over to this side because there's more light coming into the picture over here. But yes, that I think did what I wanted it to do. I'll just very carefully use another brush. This one is a flat Hake brush, just softening the background where it isn't a soft edge necessarily on the painting, but it should be. Just blurring those joins and I'm going to stop the painting there. There it is. There's my snow leopard. Yeah, that dark background really pushed it forward. I could probably push the spots a little bit more now. Maybe went a bit too golden there. Let's just see if I can do something about that. I'll lift a little bit out. Um, when you're lifting out, it's always a good idea. Clean your brush. There we go. I lifted a little bit out because I just felt that was perhaps a dollop too much of the brown. And you know when you've got it too brown because it doesn't look like a snow leopard, it starts to actually look like a real leopard or, you know, the usual leopard. Right, gonna leave it there. Hope you've enjoyed that one. Let's see how you've done in the studio.